Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fan Behavior. I am Zoe. Now, you may be asking yourself, what are you doing all by yourself? Well, Hannah is out of town this weekend on a work trip. I know I mentioned on social media that we were going to be having James Coker, our friend James Coker, on the podcast this week as our guest co-host, but due to some scheduling conflicts, all my fault, it's just going to be me on the podcast today. So James will be back at a different time. As he said before, Hannah's out of town quite a bit the next couple of months with work trips and everything. So we will get James back on the podcast, I promise you. But for today, it's just going to be a solo pod. It's our very first solo pod, my very first solo pod. So it's just going to be me recapping the Baku GP. Apologies in advance if you are like, ugh, I don't want to listen to Zoe talk for a very long time about this race. This is as good as it's going to get, you guys. This is how we have to just make things work on the fly. And again, it's my fault that I'm doing a solo pod. So apologies, but it's going to be good because this was a good race to talk about. A good race weekend. Lots of things happened. Lots of craziness went down this weekend. And I feel like, I don't want to say it was a turning point in the championship battle, but I feel like there were some missed opportunities. We're going to get into all of it, obviously. But before we get into the race weekend, as we usually do, I want to just hit some F1 news items. So we got officially this week the 2026 F1 Sprint calendar. So the races that we will be having sprint races at next season are China, Miami, Canada, Silverstone, Netherlands, and Singapore. Now, some of these, not surprising at all, and decently good places for sprints. I think China is an okay place for a sprint race. Miami has had a sprint the last handful of years. I don't know that it's the best track for a sprint race, but I think it's good for US races to have a sprint race. I think the Miami race itself, the organizers like having a sprint race because obviously they could probably sell more tickets if it is a sprint weekend for them. I think Canada is a good place for a sprint. I think Silverstone is an excellent place for a sprint race. Perfect place. The Netherlands, not so much. As we know, it's not a great track for overtaking. And Singapore, I think sprint races at street tracks are difficult in general because the risk is so high that I feel like drivers don't, because it's such a short race, they don't want to take as many risks in the sprint. And Singapore especially, I don't really understand why they have a sprint race in Singapore. I get that they have to kind of spread around the sprint race love, but I think COTA is like a place where they should always have a sprint race, and obviously Brazil. And so those two not being on the sprint race calendar next season, I'm kind of like, ugh, I don't know. Part of me feels like they should just pick the 6 best tracks for overtaking and just have those be the sprint race tracks every single year. I know that, again, that's not possible because different tracks want to have a sprint race, again, to sell more tickets. But we'll see what happens. I know there's been so much conversation about, will they add more sprint races? What will they do with the sprint races? Will they do reverse grid sprints? Like, there's a lot of conversation happening behind the scenes about sprint races specifically, which, I think Hannah is pro sprint. I am pro sprint in theory. But then when the sprint race happens, I'm kind of like, I get that it's better than like an FP2 session as a fan. I get that. But I don't often find the sprints to be all that exciting. So I think if we're going to have a sprint race, let's just mix it up. Let's do something fun and crazy and actually make it interesting as opposed to just drivers kind of holding position for 17 laps or whatever the sprint race distance is. So anyway, that is the schedule for next season. And we'll have to wait to see how all those sprint races turn out. The other piece of news that honestly I'm not quite ready to talk about, and I feel like I'm going to have to wait until it's officially confirmed to really allow myself to talk about it. But it is all the reports that have come out in the last week that Isack will be replacing Yuki in the Red Bull for 2026. Now, again, it hasn't been officially confirmed, but there has been some reporting by good journalists, right? Not just like clickbait articles, that the plan is to replace Yuki with Isack for next season. Now, obviously, on one hand, I'm not surprised. Isack has had a very solid season. This race is maybe the Baku race that we'll get to is kind of an outlier, but over the course of the season, Isack has handedly outperformed Liam. Obviously got them their first podium this season. Not first podium ever, but first podium of the 2025 season. And Isack deserves a chance in the Red Bull. And I love Isack. Also, on the other hand, you guys know I love Yuki. And I really cannot imagine an F1 grid without Yuki around, because what a joy, what a light. And I keep thinking about, God, what if Yuki had just stayed in that V-carb this season? What would he have done in the V-carb? It feels like this is how it feels for every single driver who gets in the Red Bull, but it feels like he's been put at a disadvantage the whole season because he's been in this car that nobody else can seem to drive or figure out, which is frustrating. I know there were rumors in the past that maybe Yuki was up for the Alpine seat, the Franco Alpine seat. It sounds like, according to Flavio Briatore, that's not the case, and that the Alpine seat is actually between Franco and Paul Aaron, which, let's be honest, Franco has not done himself any favors this season to retain that seat. So I don't know. I can't fully invest emotionally until it's confirmed. But obviously losing a guy like Yuki, who I think is a very talented driver and obviously a fantastic personality in Formula One, would be really tough. And for me personally, if I can be selfish for a second, if I'm forced to have gone through, what we all went through last season, losing Danny Rick, to then have to lose Yuki this season, I'm done. I cannot get emotionally invested in these drivers anymore because it's just too painful. It's too painful to see them have to leave. And anyway, so I guess if he does get kicked out of the Red Bull, and I don't really see him going back to a V-carb, I just don't see that happening, honestly. Though in some ways, if you're V-carb, like Yuki is more of a name, let's say, in the F1 space, and I think that Yuki obviously has more of like the fan following than Liam. Liam has fans and people like him, but Yuki's the more established driver in the Formula One world, and not that V-carb is making their driver decisions based on like fan votes. But I think if like all the fans voted, who would you rather see stay in the V-carb next season, Yuki or Liam? I would imagine more people would vote for Yuki. That's just a guess. Again, biased, but that's what I would think. Vote in the comments. Would you rather see Yuki or Liam? We can put it to the test. Because Arvin Lindblad is going to get that other V-carb seat. He's going to take the Isack seat, right? So it's kind of down to those two drivers for the V-carb, but I just don't see Yuki coming back into the V-carb. So I kind of think it's Liam's, especially after this weekend. So maybe Yuki will be the Aston Martin reserve driver next year because of Honda. That wouldn't shock me at all, and just kind of wait to see if he can jump in. That kind of feels like the most likely scenario. Takes the year off, is the reserve driver, and then hopefully finds himself as a potential option for another seat that might open up next season. We've talked about this. Wouldn't mind seeing Yuki in IndyCar. Wouldn't mind seeing him race the Indy 500. Wouldn't mind him being an Aero McLaren IndyCar driver. So Zach Brown, if you want to make some moves, maybe consider luring Yuki over into IndyCar, because we all think he's a fan favorite in F1. He would be, I think, like the star of the show in IndyCar, just given how hilarious he is and funny he is. And I think he would really embrace the American racing culture. So I wouldn't be mad if that happened too. But anyway, we'll talk about that more as like more stuff comes out and if it becomes more of a real thing. Okay, let's get to the race weekend. Let's get to qualifying. The amount of red flags in this qualifying session was actually out of control. I did not wake up to watch it live. I woke up late and recorded it because I was like, I just need my rest. It was my birthday yesterday on Saturday, so I, needed to treat myself on my birthday, and woke up, and I'm glad that I did that because the amount of red flags and having to fast forward, I was thankful to have that buffer. But we had an Alex Albon red flag in Q1. We had Nico Hülkenberg red flag in Q1. And then we had Franco red flag in Q1. So it was just boom, boom, boom. Again, back to Franco. He has not done himself any favors this season. Any favors at all. And it's crazy how last season when he came in to replace Logan, how he just was on it from the jump, was challenging Alex, seemed just he was so, just poised and really looked like he had the necessary, temperament to be a really successful F1 driver. And people were talking about how oh my gosh, Franco's an indicator that you can't judge the success of a driver in their junior categories to compare to how they would do in F1, because Franco didn't have the most crazy F2 performances. He was a decent driver in F2, but it wasn't like he was, top of the tables winning that championship. I think now we're kind of seeing, okay, maybe we were too quick to put praise on Franco. I mean, this has happened a lot of times, right? Nick DeVries. Now we're seeing it with Franco too. I just don't know that Franco has it in him. I just don't know if he is I think he can have a good performance, but I don't think he's the kind of driver that can week in, week out be consistently successful. Because again, we've seen lots of crashes from him this season. He really hasn't done all that much in the races. I know the Alpine has been hit or miss, and clearly this weekend the Alpine was not good at all because Pierre was also really struggling. But I have a hard time imagining Alpine keeping him for next year, even though I know he does bring a lot of sponsorship money and stuff. So maybe if he does stick around, that is why, but it's not like his performances are really doing him any favors. So anyway, out in Q1, we had Alex, we had Pierre, Esteban, Nico, Franco. Franco did out-qualify Pierre in quotations, but they were both out in Q1. Esteban, we found out after qualifying, was disqualified from qualifying because of a rear wing test failure. So he ended up starting the race from last. But again, didn't really matter for him because he already was out in Q1. Okay, then we have Q2. Lewis Hamilton gets out in Q2. Tough for me. Tough for me to experience that. Lewis has just not had a great season, if we're being honest. And I know, again, Ferrari has not been the most impressive team, but it has been a struggle for Lewis this season. And I say that as a big Lewis Hamilton fan, but we have to be honest with ourselves. It has not been great for him. Yuki barely squeaks into Q3, knocking out Alonso. I was holding my breath. Oh my God, that was stressful. I was very happy for him to get into Q3, obviously. Felt like he needed some success, so that was good. So out in Q2, we had Ollie, Lance, Gabby, Lewis, and Alonso. Okay, Q3. Craziness all over again, because now all of a sudden there's a threat of rain. And both Carlos and Liam put in really impressive laps. And then there's a red flag for Charles Leclerc going into the wall. Devastating. I am stupid. Again, my birthday was yesterday and I had to watch Lewis get out in Q2. Charles Leclerc into the wall. Then Oscar Piastri goes into the wall. And I'm like, oh my God, this is insanity. And when Oscar goes into the wall, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is Lando's golden opportunity Lando, you have a chance. Because McLaren looked good, right? They didn't look like the overwhelming favorite for pole position. It wasn't like some other tracks where it's like, this is clearly McLaren 1-2 and no one else is really close to pole. It did feel like Max had a good chance at getting a pole position. It felt like at times maybe a Charles Leclerc could get pole position. You know, you never know about the Mercedes. So the McLarens did seem like the fastest car or one of the fastest cars, and that they were definitely in the fight for pole, but it wasn't like so obvious, at least to me. But I will say, when Oscar crashed, I thought, okay, well, Lando definitely needs to get in like the top 3. Because again, we've talked about this before. We said this whenever that was when Lando had his his big crash. I guess that was Zandvoort, right? Where he DNF'd. And I said on that podcast, all it takes, and we'll get to this for what happened in the race, but all it takes is one Oscar DNF and one great Lando performance to completely put the championship back into play for a Lando Norris, right? Like, that's all it takes. And Oscar, creaked the door open for Lando with his qualifying crash and really gave Lando a chance to get back some good points off of Oscar. And then Lando just nicks that wall on his final lap, and I think he ended up qualifying. I need to look this up, but I feel like his qualifying position was it like P7? I want to say. I'm pretty sure it was P7. It just felt like he didn't do quite enough to get it to really make Oscar pay for he was I think P7. I'm looking at it right now. I think P7. Yeah. If I'm wrong about that, apologies. I'm trying to look this up, but it's not easy to see. I just felt like he needed to do more with that opportunity, and he didn't, frankly, which was tough. But you know who did do well? Again, Carlos Sainz and Liam Lawson, because not only did they put in great laps at first in Q3, they did it again. They both, like, at first I was like, oh my God, Carlos Sainz is going to get pole position, because it didn't seem like the McLaren or the Mercedes were doing, were going to really be in the fight. Obviously, Lando had his little mishap, so he's in P7. Who comes through? Max Verstappen. And that's, to me, like I was saying this to my dad when I was watching qualifying, Max just doesn't make mistakes. Sometimes he does, sometimes he does, but he just always finds a way to capitalize on everybody else's mistakes. That's the way it feels like, at least. And Max just snaps pole position away from Carlos, but Carlos Sainz P2, Liam Lawson P3, I think, was it Kimi, or was it George in 4th, Kimi 5th? Something like that. I don't really, again, this was, there was a lot going on, but I know that the Mercs were 4 and 5. Yuki in P6, great qualifying performance for him. His best qualifying performance in the Red Bull, which is also kind of crazy considering that he's in a Red Bull and hasn't qualified better than 6th the entire season. But I was very happy for him to get that 6th, because, as we'll talk about in the race, I felt like that really set him up well for the race itself. So good job, Yuki. Good job. Okay, let's get to the race. So obviously, the race begins. Oscar has an issue at the start. He falls back to last. He false starts, falls back to last, and then bam, hits the wall. My jaw dropped, because again, I'm thinking, oh my God, Lando Norris, here's your chance. Here is your chance. Here is your Oscar Piastri DNF, and here's your chance to really get back some points off of Oscar, right? This is your chance. I was also just really shocked by Oscar's crash, because it just felt so un-Oscar-like. Like, not only his false start, but falling to the back and then the crash happening right afterwards. Like it just, the weekend kind of felt off for Oscar, which is strange because I feel like Baku, he's been pretty good. Obviously he won last year, at Baku. And so I think he did. And so it just felt weird to me. His whole weekend, it felt like he was lacking confidence. It felt like he was just not really himself. Which was very, very strange. Obviously, it brings out the safety car. We had a little issue between Nico and Esteban, but that was all kind of okay. Fernando ends up getting a penalty because he basically false started when he saw Oscar false start, which was kind of funny. It was funny hearing him his radio and him being just like, yeah, like I made that mistake. I just was following Oscar. So he didn't fight back on that at all. But oh my gosh, the battles at the front, the battle between George and Yuki, because Yuki gets George, and then I think George ends up getting him back. You had the battle between Lando and Charles Leclerc. Max just sails away. Carlos and Liam are also like holding their own. And it was really just that battle in the, like for that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th positions were really like where people were fighting. I was dying laughing when we got the shot of Oscar sitting with his feet up on the barrier with the phone perched on the barrier, just watching the race. Is that not the most relatable thing ever? I mean, that's how Hannah and I, when we go to races, I'm sure many of you do the same thing. If you're not sitting by a TV screen and you want to know what's going on in the race, like you have your phone up just to figure out what the heck is happening. So funny. I don't know if he was there the entire race. It does feel like it would be a long time to just sit there, even though he like had to be there because I don't think he could cross the track, obviously. And it probably was quite a hike back to the paddock for him. But he was just chilling, waiting, relaxing. That was funny. So then we had Kimi getting past Liam in the pit stop. He did the undercut and got Liam in the pit stop. Or actually, no, he didn't he came out right behind Liam and then passed Liam when Liam was doing his first lap after the pit stop. So that was good for Kimi. We have to say Kimi had a good race weekend. It's been a rough couple of months, honestly, for Kimi. He's had a lot of mistakes, a lot of issues. You know, Toto has kind of come out, for the most part, this whole season. Toto has been very supportive of Kimi, obviously. Keeps talking about how young he is, needs to grow, develop, all that stuff. It did feel like after the last race, Toto was kind of like, no, Kimi needs to do better. Like he was now kind of being a little bit more hard on him. And I'm really glad that Kimi had a good, strong weekend. You know, 4th place. Obviously, he wasn't faster than George, and like George did get him, but I think it still was a good weekend for him. Good points, just clean, solid. I think it's exactly what he needs to build off of for the rest of the season. A weekend where he just like got good points, didn't make any big mistakes. Solid weekend for Kimi. So then it's all about, okay, what's Lando going to do? Because again, golden opportunity for Lando Norris to get some serious points. And they decide that they're going to pit him later. They're going to go long on the mediums and they're going to pit him later to hopefully be able to catch Charles Leclerc and have that offset with the tires. Because I think they said that Lando's tires were going to be like 17 laps or 13. It may have been 13 laps. I don't remember the exact number, but a decent amount of laps newer than Charles Leclerc's, and hopefully Lando can catch Charles Leclerc. Well, as it turns out, Lando Norris has another slow pit stop. I don't know what's going on on that side of the garage, but I think McLaren needs to work on some pit stop practices for Lando Norris because, oh boy, it was not great. It was about 2 seconds too long. And that really did seem to hurt him in the long run. And all of a sudden, Lando finds himself stuck in this DRS train behind Liam Lawson in 5th, Yuki in 6th, and then Lando in 7th. And that's how it was the entire rest of the race. Now, props to Liam Lawson. It has to be said. Really, really strong race. Obviously, he starts the race in a podium position in P3. He ends up losing those 2 spots to George and to Kimi. But I think, again, it's the V-carb versus the Mercedes. I don't fault him for not keeping that spot. But he defended against the Red Bull, the McLaren, and then the Ferrari of, I think it was Lewis once he swapped with Charles, for like 10 laps, maybe even more than that, with no DRS. Both Yuki and Lando had DRS on Liam and couldn't pass him. So really, really strong drive from Liam. I think it was exactly the kind of race Liam needed as well to prove why he deserved another year in the V-carb, certainly. So he did great. Obviously, as a fan, I was like, Yuki, please pass Liam. Like I want Yuki to have as good of a race as possible. There was a time there when he was running in the top 3 where I was really praying for a red flag so that they'd have to stop the race. Yuki could pit, change his tires, and then they would have to restart with him in 3rd. Obviously didn't happen, which was a bummer, but that's okay. But I was really impressed with Liam, and I have to say I was really impressed with Yuki also holding off Lando. Now, speaking about Lando's performance, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I don't know that it's fully Lando's fault. Obviously, his performance this weekend and in the race, I think he was put in some difficult situations. Obviously, where he started in the race wasn't great. The pit stop certainly didn't help. He was getting stuck in DRS trains. Like, it wasn't like he made any big mistakes in the race or anything like that. But for your rival, your championship rival, to DNF, right? The thing that it's like, this can really bring everything back into play for you, and to not really capitalize off of it, to only score 6 points when he got 7th. It's just, it's fine, but it's just not enough. And I saw someone point this out on social media, and it's such a good point, that Oscar would have lost more points to Lando had Lando finished 1st and Oscar finished 2nd, because in that order, Lando would have gotten 7 points off of Oscar. But Oscar DNFs and Lando only gets 6 points. So if you're Oscar, you're thinking, okay, it's damage limitation. Like, yeah, it sucks that I DNF'd, but my rival didn't score that many points off of me. And if you're Lando, you're probably thinking in your head, God, this could have been a weekend where even if Max sails away, pole position, wins the race, if Lando had gotten 2nd place, and it's to make matters worse too, it's not like the Ferrari was in 2nd place or even the Mercedes. You had a Williams, I guess Merc was in 2nd, but you had a Williams on the podium too. So it's like it was there for Lando to get, again, a good amount of points back. And it just feels like maybe it was a bit of a missed opportunity for him. Again, so many weekends left. There are a lot of races left, a lot of time left, a lot left to be decided. We don't know what's going to happen, obviously, going forward. I'll be very curious to see how Oscar bounces back in Singapore. I'll also be curious to see how Lando bounces back. I'm recording this podcast right after the race, so I haven't had a chance to see what Oscar or Lando said following the race about kind of what happened, but it does make it more interesting. I think we're only 20-something points. The difference between the two of them is only 20-something points. Not a whole lot, but it did feel like this was Lando's chance to get some really, really good points back, and it just feels like he kind of missed it a bit. Obviously, Max Verstappen wins. I shouldn't even say obviously, but no one paid. At least for me, we got 2 shots of Max the entire race. He was just off into the distance, sailing away, doing the things that Max Verstappen does. So impressive. Once again, 2 race wins in a row, which is, who would have thought, right? In the summer when it was just McLaren, and it seemed like Max's winning days were long gone, at least this season, they have found a way to come back and really, do extremely well. And I don't think Max is going to win the championship, I do think it's probably too far out of his reach, but he's not going out quietly, that's for certain. And, I think also if you're Oscar or Lando, it's kind of like, okay, now Max is in the fight for these wins, and Max could be taking points off of Lando and also Oscar, and like that could end up maybe helping or hurting them in their fight for the championship. So great weekend from Max again, but it kind of always is a great weekend for Max. Even when the Red Bull isn't good, it still feels like Max ekes out as much as he can possibly eke out from every single performance. Like he never leaves points on the table. Sometimes he does, but very, very, very often does he not. So good job from Max. Strong weekend, strong performance. So good. Carlos, first podium with Williams. I died laughing, him singing Smooth Operator on the radio. That was so funny. He did amazing. I mean, truly, for the Williams to get that podium, like on merit, on pace, it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't like, oh, there was rain and there was this crazy pit stop and there was this crash and no, he got that podium. He earned that podium, which was really, really impressive. I also saw people point out, which is also crazy, that Carlos Sainz in the Williams gets his first podium with his new team before Lewis Hamilton gets his first podium with Ferrari. Now, I know Lewis did win a sprint race this season, but still, an actual race podium, Carlos got his before Lewis. Who would have predicted that before the season began? Honestly, that's crazy to me. And yeah, I mean, part of me obviously was like, I wonder how Alex Albon, he seemed happy. Alex seemed very happy. He was there for the podium celebration. He was there to support. But I do wonder, because Alex has been there for so long, if he kind of felt like, I wish I was the one to get that podium for them, because it had been so long since they had one. I could be wrong about this, but I actually think their last podium was in Baku with Lance Stroll, circa 2017, Danny Rick win year. I could be wrong about that. You can fact check me in the comments. But I just thought about that. I was like, if I was Alex, I think I would feel a little bit like, I wish I had gotten that podium. I mean, obviously selfishly just to have it, but also like for the team. But really, really strong weekend from Mr. Carlos. Obviously great performance from George. Really strong the whole weekend. Very, very, very fast. I shouted out Liam before, finishing P5, his best finish. That was really strong. And then Yuki. I know that there are no like moral victories in Formula One. And obviously when your teammate wins the race, 6th place doesn't seem like it's that great, but it's his best performance in the Red Bull so far. He got a good amount of points. He held off Lando Norris. Now I know he didn't pass he wasn't able to pass Liam, which isn't great for like the storyline of like Yuki, Liam for that final V-carb seat. But he gets points. And honestly, it's been a long time since Yuki's gotten good, solid, really good points. So I'm happy for that. I want him to build off of that as we go forward in the season. And for me personally, I have to just enjoy every single Yuki performance we have for the rest of the season, because if this is the end for him, I need to just soak it in. I have learned my lesson last season with Daniel. Like, you just don't know when things are going to end for your favorite drivers, and so you got to just appreciate every single race. So that's what I'm going to do with Yuki. Isack gets points. Had a strong weekend. It was an interesting mix of drivers in that top 10, which was, I think, fun. Charles Leclerc looked good, kind of at parts, but then obviously Lewis passes him at the end. I think Charles ends up getting 9th place, which was, not that great. And honestly, I think that came down to his bad qualifying. Like I think had he qualified better last, if he managed to get in the top 5 or something, I think he probably had a chance at the podium. But if you don't qualify well in Baku, like it's gonna come back to bite you. But it was a really fun race. I was expecting more safety cars and more red flags, given how many we had in qualifying. obviously I know in qualifying, you're like pushing a lot harder. You're going for every single 10th you can get. So you're risking a lot more. So there's more likelihood of getting a red flag or, crashing. And in the race, you're not pushing quite as hard. But I still expected that we would get at least one more safety car, and we didn't get one, which was kind of crazy. So that was a little surprising on my end, but ultimately good race, fun battles, fun race. It was a fun race. And I do love a good street track. I do love Baku. Well done, Baku. It was very fun. Looking forward to Singapore, obviously, as well. Love a night race. Love a night race. And I think Singapore has the potential to bring some interesting things. We know how hot it is. We know how exhausting it is for drivers. Physically demanding race. So I think that will be fun. Okay, let's get to some of the questions you guys left, and then we'll just wrap this episode up. So one person asked, is Oscar's crash a turning point in the championship? Honestly, no, in my opinion. Like I said before, Lando not being able to really capitalize on Oscar's mistakes this weekend, and it has to be said, 2 different mistakes. Not only did he crash in the race, but he crashed in qualifying. Like, Lando had the chance to really out-qualify Oscar. Didn't really happen. I think, again, Oscar started the race in 9th and Lando started in 7th. So, like, not a huge difference there. And then Oscar crashing in the race and Lando still not really being able to capitalize off of it. And like I said before, I don't think it's fully his fault. Like, I think the qualifying mistake was his fault. Like, I think he had the potential to qualify a lot better. I think the race was he was a victim of his circumstances and obviously the bad pit stop and all that kind of stuff. But that's what happens if you don't qualify well. So if I'm Lando, I'm frustrated by that. I'm frustrated by the fact that I didn't take advantage. And if I'm Oscar, I'm like, okay, again, could have been a lot worse. So we'll see what happens in Singapore. I'm curious about like confidence levels, and I don't know, each weekend it's like if Lando just keeps chipping away, then there's a real chance there. But if Oscar comes right out of the gates in Singapore and like gets pole and wins the race and whatever, then it's like I do wonder if he'll look back on this weekend in Baku as like, God, that was the weekend I should have made a bigger. I should have chipped away at Oscar's lead a little bit more. So we'll have to wait to see. Why does McLaren keep fumbling Lando's pit stops? I wish I knew. Honestly, it's kind of it's weird. And McLaren's not a team I feel like that's like known for messing up pit stops. I feel like they've been pretty solid with pit stops most of the season. It feels like only within the last couple of weeks has there been like lots of problems. I don't know. It feels weird. If I'm Lando, I'm like, oh my God, you guys, please. Like, and that's what F1 is, right? It's a team sport. You rely on everybody doing all their jobs in order for you to have success. Like, not just the pit stop people, but your strategists and your engineers. And you also put your faith in the car that it's going to actually like get you to the finish line and not just break down on you. But it's annoying when those things happen that are out of your control. I would be annoyed by that. Did Oscar look sad this weekend? I think he was just really disappointed in himself. Like, I think his performance in qualifying, obviously disappointing, and then to crash out of the race. Like, I think obviously both Oscar and Lando understand like the magnitude of what they're fighting for and like the pressure. And they know that it's going to be such a fight. And I think Oscar just kind of felt like, oh God, I didn't really do myself any favors, obviously, but like these were mistakes that maybe I could have prevented. Like I could have done a better job. And I think that's like all of these drivers just hold themselves to such a high standard that when they make those kinds of mistakes, it just feels like, ugh. It just feels not good. So I don't know if he looked sad, but I just think he was like disappointed in himself. We'll end with this one. Is Red Bull better off without Christian? Honestly, seems like it. I mean, we haven't had like a ton of races post Christian Horner as team principal, but they have managed to win 2 races since the summer break. which is really impressive, again, because they were struggling big time earlier in the season. I don't know if it's like, you can't directly say like, yes, it's because Christian's no longer there. I have heard people talk about how, Laurent Mekies, who's now the new team principal and CEO, is more of that engineering background. And so maybe there is something to that like Laurent and Max have found a way to kind of figure out this car in a way that maybe Christian wasn't able to because he wasn't an engineer and doesn't have that kind of background. That's just a guess. I'm not sure if that's actually true or not, or if there's any truth to that theory, but maybe there's something to it. Maybe the overall vibe is better. Maybe also too, like they just figured out what to do with the car, and they figured out how to maximize the car, no pun intended. And it would have happened even if Christian was still here. Like we won't know, but it is interesting. It is interesting. I'll be curious to see how they continue the rest of the season, like if they're able to win more races, and then how that kind of translates to 2026 as well, and Max's future with the team and all that kind of stuff. But it does seem like things are heading in a better direction. Yuki is performing better, I will say too. Like he's just had better performances. I think part of that is the fact that he now has more of the equal parts that Max has. So he's still a ways off of Max, but at least he's in Q3 and he's getting good points and that kind of thing. So hopefully that will continue too. So we'll have to wait and see. Okay, guys, that is it for this solo episode. My first solo podcast episode. Again, apologies for all of the, scheduling confusion, conflicts, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully this was at least mildly entertaining for you and that it, gave you your fix of a race recap. I believe Hannah will be back next weekend. I'm not 100% sure, but I think she will be back. So we'll have another episode for you next weekend with her, fingers crossed. And as I said, we'll have James on in a future episode for a different race. I am sure of it. I would love to talk to him. I haven't had a chance to do a race recap with him, so got to make that happen. But as always, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for the birthday messages you sent over the weekend. Really meant a lot to me. You all are just the kindest, nicest people, and I felt a lot of love. I'm so thankful for this community that we have here with Fan Behavior, and you all really made me feel a lot of love. So thank you for that, and we'll see you next time. Enchanté.